thrill coasters, wooden coasters and launch coasters. I'm Rollercoaster David, and this is Coasting into Tripsdrill. So today I'm visiting Tripsdrill, which has just opened two brand new roller coasters. Tripsdrill is Germany's oldest amusement park, dating back to 1929, and it's located near the city of Stuttgart, or about 2 hours drive from Europa Park if you're considering planning a trip in that region. It's a truly unique park with lots of quirkiness and plenty of charm, plus it's now home to 6 roller coasters, 2 of which were added this year, Hals Über Kopf and Volldampf. Both of these rides are manufactured by Vekoma, and Hals Über Kopf is particularly interesting as it's the first installation of the brand new suspended thrill coaster model. Vekoma is most well known for the boomerang coasters and the infamous suspended looping coasters, or SLCs as they're commonly known. SLCs have a particularly poor reputation amongst roller coaster enthusiasts, as they often give a very rough ride, and the standard trains have really bulky restraints that will bash your ears unless you really brace yourself properly. Whilst there are a couple of decent SLCs out there that lack the typical roughness, or have updated trains with better restraints, my favourite of which being Fly the Great Nor'easter at Morey's Piers, which is actually considered to be a good coaster, the majority of SLCs are usually rubbish and uncomfortable, meaning you'll only ever ride them once. New trains alone can't improve an SLC though, as T3 at Kentucky Kingdom demonstrates very well by being incredibly rough despite having updated trains. It's clear to enthusiasts that the SLC model and track were very flawed, and thankfully, Vekoma has gone back to the drawing board to produce a new style of track and train that should replace the old SLCs in the form of the Suspended Thrill Coaster, or STC. The track and train design is actually quite similar to the suspended family coasters that Vekoma started to produce in 2001, although the track has been reinforced with a thicker backbone to enable more extreme forces and inversions, and the first installation of this new generation of coaster is Hals Über Kopf, which has pressure on it to be a good ride, and thankfully, Vekoma have succeeded in making a fantastic inverted coaster. Hals Über Kopf translates to head over heels, or headlong in English, an appropriate name as the ride has 3 inversions. At under 100 feet tall, it's not the most intimidating coaster to behold, but it manages to reach nearly 50 miles an hour, and it provides a really fun ride that packs in a lot of different elements. The first drop leads straight into a wonderful 0G roll over the station of Volodorf that has a great floating sensation before you're swept around in a junior Immelman turn that leads on to the rest of the track. I was actually quite surprised by how much airtime this coaster had, as it's not usually something you see on inverted coasters. There are actually multiple dips and hills that provide airtime, which makes it ride quite differently from inverted coasters made by other manufacturers. As well as airtime, there's also some strong positive G-force on the ride, particularly during the helix after the 3rd inversion. It's nowhere near as strong or sustained as you'll experience on some B&M inverts, but it does add some extra thrills to the ride and makes the pacing much more interesting. One thing I really like about this coaster though is the restraints, as they offer a far greater sense of freedom than you'll find on inverted coasters made by other manufacturers. The only thing holding you in is a lap bar, and the seats are spaced quite far apart, which makes it really easy to ride this with your hands up in the air for the whole ride. Your entire upper body is free to move, unlike the much bulkier over-the-shoulder restraints seen on B&M and Intamin inverted coasters, which is a huge improvement in my opinion. One negative thing I did notice while riding was a very slight rattle on some parts of the track, but nothing significant enough to detract much from your overall enjoyment of the ride. It will be interesting, however, to see how well this new track design ages in the next few years, and whether it will become rougher like previous generation Vekoma coasters, or whether it will stay as smooth as it is today. I will say that the ride doesn't quite feel finished though, as the station consists of a lot of ugly concrete and some rather temporary looking wooden construction that seems to have been bought from the local DIY store. This should hopefully change though, as there was also a banner that said a themed station would be completed for next season, so I guess they've decided to open early, in a similar way to how Karnan opened long before its theming was complete. The theming on the trains, however, is something I really like, as they're designed to look like backpacks, which works really well with the position of the riders sit in, and the standard shape of the trains. Overall, I found Hals Über Kopf to be a fantastic coaster that's very re-rideable and simply great fun. It's nowhere near as aggressive as B&M inverts, but it's still much more exciting than Vekoma's suspended family coasters and much more enjoyable to ride than a typical SLC. I really look forward to seeing what else Vekoma can do with this new suspended thrill coaster model, as in recent years, they've really upped their game in terms of coaster design. I'd even be curious to see how the standard SLC layout would ride with the new train and track, although I suspect Vekoma will stick to more original designs, but who knows, maybe one day we'll see the return of the SLC signature pretzel rollover on an STC in the future. Along with Hals Über Kopf, the park also opened Volldampf, a family boomerang coaster located in the same area of the park, whose name translates to full steam. It starts with a reverse lift hill that takes you up about 70 feet before the train is released and it flies back through the station. After that you go into a fun, twisty and bouncy track section that leads up to a hill where the track comes to an abrupt end before you fall backwards and complete the whole track in reverse. It fills the role of a family coaster really nicely, as it's a fun ride and not too intimidating to younger riders. One thing I especially like is how it interacts with Hals Über Kopf, often with the two trains coming really quite close to each other. Because of its shuttle coaster layout, and the compact layout of the suspended thrill coaster above it, the trains can cross over at several different points, and it doesn't require much synchronization to get a couple of close encounters during a ride. I did find the end section of track a bit disconcerting though, as rather than coming to an end in a steep spike, the track just curves off and ends with nothing to stop the train going over the edge. Sure, the laws of physics mean that the train will never reach that part of the track, but most shuttle coasters have some sort of block on the end for that added bit of reassurance, just in case there's a freakishly strong gust of wind. Unlike the other new coaster, the theming of this ride does seem to be complete, with a nicely designed station that has a glass roof which offers a great view as the suspended coaster goes overhead. It also has a very cute train, designed like a steam engine, which for some reason has a rather worried looking goat on the back of it. The two new coasters are located in a whole new section of the park, on the opposite side from most of the park's other coasters. In between these two sections, there's a lot of interesting stuff, with some rather strange and really unique rides. One such ride is DoppletoDonner balkan, a fairly innocent set of drop towers that may not look much taller than a typical family drop ride, but they do have an added surprise. Before the final drop, the ride falls forward in a really unnerving way, which is probably pretty terrifying if you're not expecting it. If you're wondering what the name DoppletoDonner balkan translates to, it's double thunderbar, and thanks to the meticulous research I put into creating these videos, I've discovered that the thunderbar, Donner balkan part, refers to a log people can sit on to crap into a ditch. I'll leave it to your imagination to guess where the thunder sound comes from. I guess that makes this ride quite well themed, and nowhere near as innocent as it might originally seem. The scatological theme continues in other bits of the park too, with an outhouse containing a rather upset German as the door repeatedly swings open. This is one of several scenes with animatronics that are located in the park, and it's far from the strangest. At one point, there's a naked depiction of Adam and Eve, with a snake that squirts you with water if you get too close, and another has a well with ropes attached, and if you pull on the ropes, something will come up that may well give you a bit of a surprise. I was lucky enough to get the frog of failure, however my friend Dave got something quite different. Give it a pull, Dave. Congratulations, you win a baby.
Black and white, that is a bright and brilliant car.
Another of these strange animatronic attractions is Windows of a Farmhouse, which has a ladder in front of it that if you climb up, you're greeted at the top by a character that changes each time. It may be a beautiful woman, an angry husband, someone emptying a chamber pot, or an old woman that thrusts at you suggestively. It's weird stuff like this that really adds to the strange charm this place has, and it's really unlike anything else you'll find at other parks. The weirdness extends to some of the games you can play as well, including one where you fire an egg out of a chicken's backside into other animals' mouths for some reason. It all provides a fun diversion between the coasters, which are of course my main reason for coming here. Whilst Hals Über Kopf may be the park's newest coaster, it wasn't the first one to bring the park to my attention, as I first visited it in 2015 to ride the park's launch coaster, Corraho, which would become the 300th coaster I'd ridden. This Gerstlauer Infinity coaster was the first one to feature lap bars instead of over-the-shoulder restraints, and the freedom this provides is a huge improvement. The ride is nicely themed and starts off with a drop into darkness and a hidden heartline roll inversion before the track dips once more and you're hit by a powerful launch that accelerates you to over 55 miles an hour in less than 1.6 seconds. This launch certainly has a kick to it and sends you soaring into the ride's tallest element, an outward banked top hat that provides some fun airtime before you dive down and into what I think is probably the largest corkscrew in the world. This element seems to be described on most sites as a dive loop, but as you enter and exit it heading in the same direction, it feels more like a huge corkscrew when you ride it. The rest of the ride has many more twists and turns, airtime hills, and a couple more inversions, and whilst it started to get a little rattly as it's aged, it's still a great fun adrenaline-filled ride. Their other large coaster is one I was less impressed with, the wooden coaster Mammoth. This coaster looks pretty impressive, and is the longest coaster in the park, however it just doesn't seem to really do much with that length. It has some nice theming in the station and pre-lift section, but after that the ride just doesn't do anything particularly memorable or interesting at all, just meanders forcelessly around the track. I'm not sure if it just doesn't travel fast enough, or if the hills are the wrong shape, but for a wooden coaster of this style, there's hardly any airtime at all. It's not rough or uncomfortable by any means, it's just kind of meh, which has led to it being referred to as Mehmet by some of my friends. Whilst it's not a bad coaster, and it's very easy to ride, it feels like it should have been so much more than it is. There's also a large Tivoli family coaster which is fairly unremarkable, but the other coaster I'd like to talk about is Gesente Schoo, which Google translates as baked pig, although I believe it's local slang for a fast rider or driver. This Gerslauer Bobside coaster, or Gersty Bob as I prefer to call them, was actually the first of its kind, and has proved popular with a clone of its layout being built in Denmark. It's a fun coaster filled with tight twists and turns around the main theming piece of the ride, a large castle which doubles as part of the park's unusual log flume. It's a fun and really twisty ride with some wild mouse type sections and tight helixes, rounded off by several back-to-back airtime hills near the end. The queue line is also quite impressively themed, but the log flume is probably more interesting. It's themed around a mythical fountain of youth, and features a surprising amount of nudity for a theme park ride. It's another of those quirky things I love about this park, so if you visit, be sure to ride it, and not just because the park says it's the tallest log flume in Europe. One thing less good about the park, though, were the wasps, which seemed to be out in force during our visit, and were determined to try and steal my beer. Beer isn't the only representation of alcohol though, as there's also a wine museum on site, which will give you a free glass if you pay it a visit, and next to it is a rather unusual wine tub ride that's almost like a powered Virginia reel coaster. For the most part, it's pretty gentle, but at several points the tub starts to spin quite quickly. There's loads more things that you'll find in this park if you keep exploring, including some nicely themed flat rides, a fun house, and some more rides you just won't find anywhere else. It's just such a unique park. Overall, we had a great day at Tripsdrill, and the new Vekoma suspended thrill coaster is a fantastic addition that pushes the park to an entirely new level. We weren't done for the day though, as when the park closed, we headed off to Holiday Park to ride the legendary Expedition G-Force in the dark. Keep an eye out for that episode in the future, and if you want more frequent updates from me on the places I visit, follow me on Instagram. For now, I've been Rollercoaster David, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video very soon.